In our series, I told you to only use brake fluid, don't use any mineral oil or any type of paraffin to clean your calipers. And I said this in 2 videos, and I just want to alliterate this. Basically, you only use brake fluid and a recognised grease, which is red grease. Okay, you keep all your tools scrupulously clean and use brake cleaners to clean anything. You can also use methylated spirits on brake linings, for instance, if you need to clean them. But the recognised stuff to use is only for brakes. You do not use paraffin, petrol, or any other type of spirits or mineral oils. This also includes using copper slip when you're changing your pads. I know some people do it. They put copper slip on the pistons and then push them back in, so they think they're going to lubricate it on the wiper seal. Just use rubber grease. Don't use any other type of grease. This is one reason I'm not very keen on showing how to use grease or a grease gun to pump out a piston, for instance, because if you have any of that grease left in the caliper afterwards, then what you're going to end up with is trouble later on, because the brake fluid will react with that grease being a mineral oil and then cause problem with your seals later on. Now, looking at the service workbook, LDV one, I happened to be browsing through this the other day, and I'm going to dig some bits and pieces up about drum brakes yet. But the good old LDV, yeah, come on, that's 1994. That was at one time earlier. It was in the Land Rover stables, Freight Rover, Land Rover, and Range Rover. Basically, all components, braking and the such like, they're all sort of made by the same sort of people. The components in them are very similar materials. So pay attention to what I've got to say here, because basically, coming from the workshop manual, it's important that you adhere to this sort of thing. Otherwise, you'll find out you'll have problems. Or you might be able to recognise this problem in somebody else's vehicle later on. Anyway, these happen to be the rear brakes on our Convoy, and these are self-adjusting brakes, and I'm not going to go into that. But right, so brake preventative maintenance, okay. Basically, they always say that you change your brake fluid every 2 years, 24 months, or 24,000 miles, something like that. And all fluid seals in the hydraulic system and flexi hoses should be renewed every 4 years. This is to cover their backsides, just to make sure that their brakes don't fail, and also obviously you need to really overhaul your brakes every 4 years. Direct acting servo replaced every 5 years or 96,000 miles. Not that anybody ever does that. Right, so what's interesting in the LDV workshop manual, and this is basically for helping technicians because we do have a busy life. Right, so brake drag, symptom, possible cause, hydraulic pressure build-up in master cylinder, and number 2, this is what you want to pay attention to, rubber cups or seals that are swollen due to brake fluid contamination by petrol, paraffin or mineral oil, etc. So basically it tells you that is one possible thing you could have, is your seals will swell up and then you'll start to get something called brake drag, which is your brakes dragging. The solution to this is to, you check to see if you have any oversized seals. If they're swollen, they're usually recognisable. I've not actually ever seen it, but it's possible. All rubber parts, such as cup seals and flexi hoses, must be changed, and then the system flushed through before fitting new parts, because if you have too much contamination, it could swell up a flexi, and then that will fail too. Believe me, flexis do actually fail, and I had one in a workshop. It was a Mercedes Sprinter, or was it an IV car? I can't remember now. Anyway, had problems. It was having a brake drag and overheated one of the discs. And number 3 here, you can see this obstruction in the flexi brake hose. Yes, it did, because it had become delaminated. The vehicle was about 6 years old. The flexis had never been changed. So there you go, there's a lesson. This is why they tell you to replace stuff after 4 years. Basically because they can't warranty the parts after then. And I think if you are going to look after a vehicle, then you'd want to take the time. If it's old, then I wouldn't think twice about changing all the rubber parts in a vehicle straight away. That's just one of those things. Okay, now you know, you'll never be able to unknow it, will you?